started. We've obviously got a few comments to make before the main commenters come up on the stage tonight, so we're going to get going. We always begin and end with gratitudes here at Golden Beer Talk, so we are going to start with that, thanking first and foremost the Buffalo Rose for hosting us. These guys are amazing. Tonight in the house we have Dave, and then also we have this lovely human, Brandon, who's doing a juggling act, and only found out he was going to be here a couple moments before he was here because our usual bartender, Adam, is having a little bit of a toothache. And lucky for him, Brandon is his roommate. And lucky for us, Brandon is his roommate. Thank you, Brandon. You're amazing. And sending healing energy to Adam. Nobody likes a toothache. Right. We are also grateful to goldentoday.com for always promoting our events and taking custody of knowledge and awareness and love for our community. So thank you very much to goldentoday.com. A quick little rundown on our organizing team, which is a very loosely organizing team. And the aforementioned publisher of goldentoday.com, Barb Warden, right over here, is on that group. Her husband, Frank Blaha, I know I just saw him toward the back of the room. There he is. He's at the bar. Way to go, Frank. Jim Clausen is also on our team. Sitting with Becky Bryce, also on our team. Bart Silvers at the soundboard. My name is Whitney. That's all of us. And we are so grateful to all of you for being part of our audience and making possible these gatherings. Our mission is basically conviviality, and that's impossible without a group of people who want to convive. So thank you very much for being here. We're grateful. If you are so moved, there are some fun ways to support Golden Beer Talks. One of them is to buy one of our pint glasses with our lovely logo. They're available at the bar, and there is a QR code because we're modern. And so you can just buy up one of those cool pint glasses, and that is one thing that we have on offer. We also have every October a live auction here in this venue, and it is for an honor known as the Very Special Table. You will see tonight we have two very special tables, and we are deeply grateful to Don and Carol Cameron and to Larry Day and Catherine Haskins for supporting us by bidding at our auction. Look at how much fun they're having. Who doesn't want to be them tonight, right? Yeah. So if you're here in October, you too can have a very special table and host your friends and eat and drink to your heart's content in the front row. This is something to consider. I'm next going to bring up our featured brewer for tonight. This is exciting news for people who love beer, many of whom are in this room. You guys, there is a new Golden Area brewery that's amazing. It's on Youngfield. It's called Mack's, and we get to feature them tonight. Their brewer, Bob, is here to tell you a little bit about his story, and he is coming up next. Bob.
Wow, a lot of people here. Most people I talk to are stainless steel tanks and boil kettles.
Pretend I'm a tank.
You kind of look like one. Just kidding. So, anyway, we're Mad Max Brewing. We just opened in November. Mid-November, and like 20th and Youngfield, just south of Applejacks. I'm sure all you guys know where Applejacks is. We've been open for a few months now. We do just about every kind of beer there is. I'm not afraid to do anything. got some Belgians on, I got lagers on, IPAs, I got a sour coming out, just everything. I fear no beer. Tonight, what you guys are drinking, hopefully, my Love and Chocolate Stout, which is bloody amazing.
Very good.
There's so much chocolate in that. Now it went a little overboard, but it's okay. It's good. And then the next is the Amber Lager, Amber Ale, which we did with Over Yonder Brewing before we had even opened, because we needed beer to open. So we did a couple collabs, and he was gracious enough to host us. So designed that just to be a basic, good fall drinking beer, and that's how it came out. And I drink it all the time at the brewery, but I think it's tasty. But yeah, that's about all I got. I don't talk as much as Ryan back there. I'm sure you all have heard him talk a few times. I don't have that. So,
Where did you get your experience?
my experience, self-taught, most of it. I've been professionally brewing in Colorado for 6 years, but been brewing, home brewing since like 2011. So, been doing a lot of experimentals, but then yeah, brewing from small breweries up to 1,000+ barrel a year, almost production taproom brewery. So put a lot of time on the deck, and it's been great. I love it. Can't wait to brew more. That's what I do. That's what I like. So.
Golden Bear Pots, our planning group decided that one of the best things about Golden is the open space that surrounds us. And we decided it would be great to get a talk about open space. And since I knew the city was working on a Golden open space plan, I thought it would be particularly nice to hear from people who knew about Golden's open space. As a result, our speakers tonight are Tom Schweich and Ann Norton. So, about Tom. Despite a career in information technology, Tom Schweich has spent 40 years of experience with plant specimen collection, plant identification, and preservation and curation of plant specimens in California and Colorado. He is also interested in the history of Colorado botany, such as the early expeditions and their scientists, the plants they found and the names they were given, and how recent advances in genetics have changed our view of the evolution of plants and their names. The Golden Open Space parcel Schweich Hill up by Cannonball Creek Brewery is named after him to honor his work there. He is an active member of Stewards of Golden Open Space, a volunteer with Golden's Weed Busters and with Jefferson County Open Space. Our other speaker is Ann Norton. Returning to her home state in 2008, Ann has practiced law in a variety of states and federal jurisdictions, most recently with the Norton law firm. Her practice and expertise included business and nonprofit corporations and land use, community development, real estate, and related areas. She is a co-founder and president of Stewards of Golden Open Space. And with that, please join me in welcoming Tom Schweich and Ann Norton.
I'm Ann, that's Tom. We are so glad glad to be here tonight. Honestly, I have never been able to make it to one of these events before, but I really expected it to be an intimate little gathering. So our conversation is going to be a little more formal, I guess. So yes, we're here tonight to talk about the City of Golden open spaces. And first, just want to clarify that when we talk about open spaces, we're distinguishing them from our parks and other recreational facilities. So how many people here have visited a park, a Golden Park? Oh, wow. How many people have visited a Golden open space? Great. How many people know what we mean when we refer to Golden open space? Should have asked that first. Wonderful. Well, first I'd like to tell you just a little bit about Stewards of Golden Open Space. So we are, I guess I have this. What's this? I'm retired, so I don't do this. So we are a nonprofit, a tax-exempt nonprofit. So if you decide to donate, and we are always welcoming donations, it will be tax-exempt. We're an all-volunteer organization. We are formed by residents of Golden in 2019, so we're actually celebrating our 6-year anniversary tomorrow. Is that better? We are always looking for volunteers. We do have a steering committee. We welcome volunteers on the steering committee to do tours and to participate in our other events. We do have a sign-up sheet here. If you would like to provide us with your email address, you can be put on our email mailing list. You will not be barraged with fundraising letters except maybe once a year. But we do periodically send out new information about what we're doing or what we've learned. I would really encourage you to check out our website. Marianne Blumenthal is our webmaster. And we really have a lot of information about Golden open spaces. So what are we all about? Well, we were formed when it became apparent that there were increasing pressures on the little bit of open space that we actually have in Golden. And so we decided that we needed to really focus on learning about what we have in our open space, where our open spaces are and what we have. Educating those of us in the community about what we have, advocating for this very limited amount of open space, and as you learn, we really only have about 375 acres of what we call open space in Golden. And then to advocate for preserving what should be preserved in these open spaces, and ultimately to develop a plan in the City of Golden to manage it in a more thoughtful way. Let's see. Oh, it works. Okay. So what do? We do meet as a steering committee, but during the past 6 years, we have developed a number of programs. Many of those are led by people in this room, like Donna Anderson, who does our geology tours. So we sponsor annual geology tours, history tours, wildlife tours that Jefferson County Open Space personnel have helped us with. Tom does some plant field trips. And these are really geared towards trying to understand what exists in our open spaces and why those assets are important. We also do bird watching tours a couple of times in the spring. Often we partner with the Denver Audubon in addition to our master birders that are a part of Stewards. So again, if there is an opportunity to sign up if you're interested in being notified about these tours. We also worked with the Colorado Natural Heritage Program a couple of years ago to conduct a biological survey, wildlife and vegetation, in several of the parcels of Golden Open Space, and we got our supporters funded that, along with the Stonebridge HOA and the Golden Civic Foundation. Tom's going to talk a little bit more about that. We also worked with the mine students on a capstone project to inventory some of our Golden Open Spaces, get more information about some of the specific parcels. We also have partnered with other community groups to do educational gatherings. And we are currently working with city staff and a consulting firm to develop an open space master plan. You may or may not know, but most cities and jurisdictions do have an open space master plan to guide the management and use of their open spaces, but Golden does not yet. It's in the works. So there is our website, but it's also on the materials. Okay.
So Golden is really deeply embedded within Jefferson County open space. The green on this chart is Jefferson County open space, and the gold color is the city limits, or within the city limits of the city of Golden. There's also some muddy colors down there. That's where Jefferson County open space is also inside the city of Golden. So you may know, you've been to Apex Park, Matthews Winters, on North Table Mountain, South Table Mountain, Windy Saddle. This is all Jefferson County open space. But it turns out that Golden owns some really nice parcels of vacant land that have a more or less vague status. If you read the plats or you read the deeds, it'll say something like, this space is dedicated for open space, utilities, and drainage. Open space with a little o and a little s. We have about 375 acres of those, and I'll show you some of them. But when we start looking at them, we find out that they're little remnants of prairie, which is what Golden looked like before all these people showed up. We have stream valleys, we have hogbacks, so these are structural ridges. We have, and in those, we have wildlife corridors. We have a lot of wildlife moves through our little bit of open space, birding sites, and we have actually 3 rare plants in Golden. Just for comparison's sake, down there about in the middle, Jefferson County open space has about 58,000 acres of open space. City of Golden has about 375 acres. It's not much, but it's pretty special. If you live in Golden, there's an open space near you, and I'll show you some of those. If you live in the north neighborhoods, like Pine Ridge Estates, Mesa Meadows, places like that, we'll talk about 3 of them. This is the North Golden Hogback. It's at the very north end of town. There's not much up there, but it's a hogback. It's got sedimentary strata that have been tilted up till they're completely vertical. There was some mining up there, and what they mined was clay. And in the process of mining the clay out, they exposed, in the sandstone, they exposed tracks, footprints of birds and crocodiles. And there are some papers, and we think that these might be the oldest bird tracks in North America. This is a picture of North Table Mountain from Mitchell School. The city of Golden owns all of that slope that you see below the cliffs. It's about 135 acres, and it is our largest single open space. There is one trail that goes through there, and I know some people know how to actually go through that space and get up on top of the mesa by that little juniper tree that's up on the rim. Tucker Gulch is a floodway. That's where the floods come down from Golden Gate Canyon. But when it's not flooding, it's a pretty nice space. And I've been in there. I have to tell a story that one time I saw a report on iNaturalist of a very rare plant, and it was placed in there, so I went to find it. As I'm crashing through the brush, trying to find this thing, I realized that there's a person sitting just across the creek, just having a moment of quiet time. And so even in that narrow space, there's a lot of quiet and a lot of opportunity for contemplation or just having some peace. And also there's no major roads near Tucker Gulch. So it's quiet. It's another reason why it's quiet in Tucker Gulch. I don't know who this Schweich guy is. I think the city plans to bury him up there. I think that was the idea. But I found this by accident. I was saw somebody walking their dog on North 4th Street and they disappeared. And I went, where'd they go? And I walked in there and found this. This is about 4 acres in size. It's the hill up by Cannonball Creek Brewery. I would assert that it's probably the most intensely studied 4 acres in Golden by me. It's a remnant prairie. So it's a mixed grass prairie up there, and I have so far found 141 species of plants in 4 acres, of which about 94 or about 2/3 are native and about 1/3 are not native. Pretty neat little spot. So if you live in the middle neighborhoods, and I'm thinking of Parfit Estates, Beverly Heights, along East Street, or even down Harmony Village, I'll tell you about 3 of these open spaces that are in your neighborhood. Most people know about South Table Mountain and the Lubon Trail. Down there in the lower right-hand corner, there's a little white line indicating actually the dimensions of that parcel or the boundaries of that parcel. Kind of a funny little parcel. It's embedded within Jefferson County open space, but it's got a nice trail. Not only does it have a very heavily used trail at that, but in addition, it has some interesting plants. Those 2 plants that you see, one of them is the star lily. It's a common early flower around Golden. The other one is the Missouri foxtail cactus. And by Missouri, we don't mean the state of Missouri, we mean the Missouri River, which was the highway for the early explorers, like in the early part of the 19th century, exploring Western America. Parfit open space, that's where the hang gliders and the parasailers land. They actually land on city land. It's an adjacent mines parcel, but they land on city land. It's kind of a funny C-shaped space. It's basically where they couldn't build houses. But what's interesting to me is I was out there in December, because that was when I had to walk it to actually prepare for this presentation. And I realized this plant in the upper left is called winter fat. It has a really long name, Crassioninacovia lanata. But it's called winter fat because it's a nutritious browse plant in the wintertime. Interesting to me is that it's never before been seen in Golden. It's probably always been here, but no one has found it. And what that points out to me is the importance, if we're thinking about these open spaces, the importance of actually going out and walking them and looking and seeing what's there. Cottonwood open space is down by Harmony Village. And this is a little funny one. It's about 1.5 acres of land. It's tucked in between the golf course and the high school. It's pretty weedy. Most people didn't know we had it. Kinney Run runs through it, and of course all the neighbors talk about they always see wildlife in there. We had no plan for it other than to occasionally spray the weeds. So it'll be interesting to figure out as we go through this open space master plan, and we plan what to do with this space. This will be an interesting one. And by the way, does anybody here eat or drink goji berries? No, a couple people. Okay. Those red fruits in the upper left, that's goji berry. It's growing wild. Unfortunately, I would tell you that the plant Lycium barbarum is known as a noxious weed in a number of states in the United States, not yet in Colorado. If you live in the south neighborhoods, we'll talk about Kinney Run, Heritage Dells, and the Magic Mountain Archaeological Site. Kinney Run has at least 4 parts to it. In the bottom screen, there's and you probably can't see it. Those of you in the back, this is an eye chart. There's an A on the left. There's actually some remnant prairie in Kinney Run. There's a B kind of in the middle. That's a hogback, like the North Golden hogback. And then there's a riparian valley. It's another valley that is like, there's no major streets nearby. It's quiet. It's a great place for quiet. The 2 pictures in the top show the trail. Actually, the purpose of that trail in there is to keep people on the trail and not go off the trail because we have 2 rare plants in Kinney Run. But it's a nice spot. As you ride your bicycle, you can walk, it's quiet. There's a lot of biodiversity in Kinney Run. Even though these spaces are small, when you start studying them, you realize that there's a lot of things to be found there. Obviously the elk, I've seen coyotes, I've seen bobcats. The people who live along Kinney Run, they all have a game camera on their back fence. And not bobcats, mountain lions. There's also some really interesting geology there and some hydrology, and then the history, the Cambria lime kiln, where we mined lime and then calcined it to make mortar. Heritage Dells open space. So this is 3 small gulches in the Heritage Dells development. These were obviously deeded to the city because they couldn't build houses on them. We don't have a plan for it. I've only been there in winter, so I can't tell you what's really there in the summertime. But again, this is one that'll be interesting to see. What do we do? How do we plan for managing this space going forward? Magic Mountain, this is the last one. So this is an archaeological site. We think there's about 6,000 years of archaeology to be seen there. It's about 10 acres in size. It's not open to the public because of the archaeological resources. But we think we're planning for it as we're working on an open space master plan. We're planning for how to manage it going forward. You're up.
So that's just a little taste of what we have in our golden open spaces, and we are continuing through our work, continuing to learn more about what's there, and we're hoping that eventually in the open space master planning process that we will be able to do a much more thorough inventory of the really important assets and attributes that we have in this really sparse holdings of 375 acres. And as you saw in the chart that Tom put, most of our surrounding communities have many, 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 many more acres of open space. So what we have is really precious. So as Tom mentioned, some of the what we call our attributes or resources that we think are really valuable and important include important geological formations, paleontology. You know that the Dakota hogback that he mentioned, these really important early fossils, are part of the National Natural Landmark designation. That's a designation provided by the National Park Service. How many people knew that? Well, some. I think those are all the geologists, right? Paleontologists and geologists. As Tom mentions, we have some really important vegetation. Some of these are fragments, some of them are larger parcels, some rare plants, lots and lots of wildlife. I'm sure that most of you, if you've walked along Kinney Run and some of the other areas, you've been privileged to see the big elk herds. But as Tom mentioned, there's lots of other wildlife that both live here and migrate through. We have a lot of historical resources, not just in Kinney Run, but in some of our other open spaces. Important wetlands and riparian areas. And also our green spaces provide buffers from some of the chaos of modern life, and passive green space, of which we have very little, only basically 375 acres. So as Tom mentioned, some of these sites have been the subject of some really important scientific research that's been done, not just the Magic Mountain Archaeological Site, but also the hogback. Tom's work has been really important in identifying our vegetation, and including the rare plants. Oh, I'm sorry. There's the research. and the, let's see. Yeah, we've mentioned this to the Colorado Natural Heritage Program. We're hoping that we can get them back here again to do a more extensive inventory, a biological assessment of the all of our open spaces. And I would encourage you to look on our website. As I mentioned, we really do have and a great deal of information about the open spaces that we've been able to gather. And for those of you who have expertise in a particular area, we certainly welcome your participation to help us learn more about what we have.
Taking a nap, I guess. Okay, for what the things that we have found, we have three major ecosystems in our open spaces. One with the really long name, Western Great Plains Foothill and Piedmont Grassland. That's a long name for prairie, and we have a lot of it. The thing about prairie in Colorado is that it is really imperiled as an ecosystem because it's also a great place to build houses. So we're losing a lot of our prairie. We also have shrublands, and we have some riparian areas. For plant resources, my own research tells me that we have about 744 species of plants just in Golden. That's about 20% of the flora of Colorado can be found in Golden. We have 3 species of concern. They're actually all listed rare plants. And that picture on the right there is Phaceria vitulifera. It's really restricted to the parts of the Front Range here in Colorado. Yeah, got that right. Okay, wildlife, we've got lots of wildlife. I guess I mentioned we've got bobcats, coyotes, bears, not to mention little guys like meadow voles. Birds, we have about 120 species of birds. We have reptiles, we have bull snakes, garter snakes, prairie rattlesnakes, and that little yellow-bellied racer in that picture on the lower right-hand corner. I found that little guy on North Table Mountain. We also have butterflies. The interesting thing about butterflies to me is that we have that little blue butterfly there is an obligate feeder on the hops that you see in the middle. And we have wild native hops in Kinney Run, on Eagle Ridge, on North Table Mountain, possibly a few other places. Actually, there's a lot of it along the Welch Ditch up in Clear Creek Canyon. So this inspired a craft beer. It was actually Odell Brewing, I think, who came out with it. And I checked, they don't make it anymore. So I don't know, maybe people don't like butterfly beer. We'll see. Okay, Ann, you're up for the final slides.
Okay, so we tried to give you a little hint of the important attributes in these very precious natural areas that we have in Golden. So what we discovered was that right now there's nothing in city ordinance or city code that governs how these open spaces are used or protected. And so that's why we have advocated for an open space master plan, which the city has funded phase 1. And as I said, the purpose of this plan and what we hope will be the outcome is some thoughtful decisions and consensus on how we should manage and preserve the assets that we have. What is the Joni Mitchell song? You don't know what you got till it's gone? Well, that's kind of our guiding mantra, that we really need to understand what we have and what's worth preserving, and then take the steps to preserve it. So we are, sorry, I can't see the whole screen. Phase 1 of the master plan was concluded in 2022 with the development of a mission, vision, and definition to guide the management of these areas. And I would like to read the definition because I think it's really important as a guiding document for how we move forward. I don't know if you can read it, but the definition of open space in Golden: those lands owned or acquired by the City of Golden, whose purpose is primarily conservation or preservation, and that are managed to maintain, improve, or adapt the ecological and or historical integrity of the parcel for enjoyment by future generations. We should have in there too, enjoyment by the existing generations, but also to preserve it for the future. So we are now involved in phase 2, which there's also a park and recreation master plan ongoing, but the plan for the open space is a separate process. Phase 2 is going to include many components, including identification and consensus of what we actually mean by the parcels that we've explained here tonight. And several of the folks who are involved with stewards have done extensive research to identify the boundaries of these parcels, any restrictions that might currently exist on these parcels. For example, Kinney Run, the creation of Kinney Run as a subdivision identified Kinney Run open space as open space to be preserved as open space. So those are important elements that we hope will be identified in this phase 2. Phase 3 will hopefully include the development of a management plan, but we also hope will include a more extensive inventory of the important attributes and resources that we have. So I don't know if people are on Guiding Golden. Oh, slide. But if you go on Guiding Golden, you can see regular updates of what's happening with the Open Space Master Plan, both the Parks Plan and the Open Space Plan. So this is just a quick list of what we recommend as stewards of Golden Open Space. And remember, stewards of Golden Open Space is residents of Golden. We're volunteers, but we are all residents of this community and concerned about what happens to our open space. So the first, of course, is to develop the master plan that's in the work to protect the important areas that we have, which Tom has mentioned. We would like to see many more educational opportunities, some signage along some of the trails to identify the important attributes, to remind people about how important these are and how precious and fragile they are. As Tom mentioned, we do have some trails through some of our open spaces. And again, our understanding is that the reason for these trails is to focus and limit human impact to protect the resources in the surrounding natural areas. We would like, as I mentioned, too, to do some additional work to identify the biological and other important resources, and to coordinate with the owners of adjacent lands, including Jeffco and private owners. So please visit our website. We are modern too. See the QR code. So I hope it works tonight. We do have some cards here also with our website. Please consider signing up so that you can get our regular information. Please also consider volunteering if you have interest in learning more about what we have in our open spaces and in educating our community about those resources and helping us to do additional resources or inventories. We welcome your participation. So thank you so much for having us. I guess we have a break and then questions, so be kind.
Before we break, a couple quick notes. I wanted to mention that we have been doing this for a while now, and I'm going to tell you guys about a little party we're going to have. Next month, we're going to be celebrating our 100th gathering of Golden Beer Talks here in this house. So that is something to consider, put on your calendars. Also, by my count, we have 6 former Golden Beer Talk speakers and at least 2 brewers in the house. I want to specifically mention just a couple folks, so they were mentioned from the stage, just to clarify. Donna Anderson, over here, former Golden Beer Talk speaker, geologist mentioned from the stage. Also, reference to Ryan. This is Ryan over here, Brews Beers. He's a Goldenite, a proud member of our community. So those are the 2 I'm going to call out from stage here. We are going to take a quick break. We have not kicked those kegs yet. Let's see what we can do. We will come back for Q&A here shortly. Thank you so much. Hello. Good evening again. again. Yay! I know for sure that the Golden Lead Busters are in the house with some questions. And maybe some other folks too. So we're gonna start Q&A. I want to point out our team member Becky over here. She has the roving mic. We are trying to record your question as well as the response because we are on AV right now. So when you are ready to ask your question, please stick that hand up. Becky will come running and she will get your question, and then Ann and Tom will be up here answering your question. Here we go. Q&A is beginning.
All right, I want to ask a question regarding Heritage Square, Apex Gulch Mining, because that is within the city limits of Golden. I know it is because I was on the Planning Commission in the 70s when we annexed that land that brought that mine in. We did not know they were going to mine, and boy, were we surprised. But anyway, that is within the city limits. Most of it, there's a little small portion that is county. And they keep dangling this thing that they have a lake up there that they want either the county to take over or the city of Golden will get it. I don't think because of the depth of that lake that they'll be able to open it up to the public. But it would still be open space. But the other part of it is Heritage Square. That was an important part of the community for many, many years. And then the mining operation bought it and they just let it go to heck. And everything deteriorated and it's now been torn down. But I'll tell you, that was a very important part of the community for many years. And that should stay within Golden. That should not be taken over by the county, although I know the county wants it. And I think we should be steadfast in keeping that within the city limits of Golden.
We don't have very much open space, but we are not at all opposed to getting more. And so that's going to be a big part of the open space master plan process too, we've done battles already. So, so I really appreciate that comment because I think there are not a lot of available opportunities to create more open space in Golden, and that's certainly one that should be on the list.
Yeah, there's some clever horse trading going on with that parcel, and we're just trying to save what we got. Next question.
So I noticed from your information about the Magic Mountain over here that there's been work there since, the 50s or 60s. What I would like to know is, are any artifacts being found and discovered out of that? Are they being kept here in Golden for our community?
My understanding is that the first extensive excavation in the 1950s was done by the Peabody Museum from Yale. So I have a feeling that's probably where the artifacts are. The most recent one was done by a group associated with the Denver Museum of Nature and Science. So I would assume or hope that's where the artifacts went, but I don't have any personal first-hand knowledge on that.
So when we talk about how much, over here,
Right here.
oh, there you are, okay. How much the city of Golden has open space compared to other municipalities, and is there, like we live in Boulder and they have, just crap load. But is it really that is that a good comparison? Or is it the fact that the county plays a bigger role in the open space surrounding Golden than Boulder County does surrounding Boulder?
Let's see if I can get us there quickly. This one. Yeah, the county open space has tax funding, has a special, and don't press me for the details of when and how much, but the citizens of Jefferson County agreed to be taxed, and that money goes to Jefferson County so they can acquire a lot of land and also do some horse trading as well. My impression, looking at the deeds and the plats for the open space that Golden owns, is it was mostly like a one-off thought. Here we're going to do Lakota Hills, and oh, by the way, the city can have this, probably because it's not buildable, would be my guess.
Thank you. I recently became aware through a nature film series of the importance of, I believe it's a Third Kingdom. In addition to flora, fauna, you have fungi. And of course, it's manifested in toadstools and mushrooms, of which there are many. And is there any consideration to taking that into consideration with regard to the inventory?
The objective for the phase 2 of the open space master plan, at the end, the recommendations will include a recommendation for a full biological inventory that would include fungi.
I got a softball question. If you could create the distinction between Jeffco open space and Golden open space and how you see those as being distinct or the same. And the other question, maybe a little harder, could you describe who owns, if you know, the blank space on South Table Mountain that's not the city and not the county?
Yeah. I'm not sure I understood part A, but part B I get. I might have to ask you to go back, take the mic back, because I don't know, the way the speakers are, I don't understand. The part B question is, why is there a blank space on top of South Table Mountain? It's privately owned. I think the guy's name is Bradley. He lives in Morrison. His last proposal was to put solar panels up there like he's put next to the school in Morrison. There's a whole bunch of solar panels kind of next to the road, maybe kind of hidden. And I know that Jefferson County Open Space has offered to buy that property at a reasonable price many times. And so far he's not selling. I would ask the first question again.
Right. So the county programs their open space. They have trails. You look at North Table open space, it's all trails. Can you distinguish Jeffco open space from Golden open space, sort of so that we could share that out into the community of how you see those as being different?
Yeah, Jefferson County Open Space has an awful lot of open space. They actually own open space all the way from White Ranch all the way into Boulder, in conjunction with Boulder Open Space and Mountain Parks. In fact, one of the parks there, called Lippincott, is actually jointly owned by Jefferson County and Boulder Open Space and Mountain Parks. And there are no plans yet to open those to the public. They have an incredible amount of land. They have 58,000 acres. And even if they program 1% of their land, that'd be like 580 acres. And that's more than Golden has. So they can program parcels of land and really have very little impact on the bulk of their open space. You want to say something about that one?
I think that... Is the question related to having more programs in our open space?
It really goes back to your question. How many of you have been in Golden open space? How many of you know that?
Right.
That's the question.
Yeah, so, and right now there really isn't, I'm trying to think of where there is any signage that designates the different open spaces and where the boundaries are. And that's why we think that that's an important element of our open space master plan, is to make people aware of where is Golden and where is Jeffco. Not that it's necessarily important, because many of the golden open spaces also abut Jeffco open space and serve as entryways to the Jeffco open space. But we do think that it's important to have some signage at some point that specifically designates golden open space, so that people are aware that they're in golden open space and what attributes exist there. Right now, I think we've got 3 signs. One sign on the Illinois open space, which is a tiny little parcel by in the golf course. There's one on the Bachman property, and in Schweich. Yeah, I think those are the only places, and we have actually requested that the city provide more signage in the open spaces, not only boundary designations if that's important, but also some more educational signage. And so we're hopeful that that's going to be a part of the open space a result of the open space master plan.
I'm having a chance to think about your question, Dawn. One of the things that occurs to me is that Stewart's does some programming. We do our history tours, we meet at the kiln, we talk about the history, we talk about the geology. I do field trips, but I would just point out that, like in Kinney Run, we only do that from the concrete trail. We don't go off trail because of the rare plants and the slick rock and the other habitat in Kinney Run. So we have to be careful since we have so little. It's really easy for people to step off the trail and go, oh man, I wish you wouldn't do that, but I know you want to hear what I had to say. So, yeah.
Hi, thank you for your presentation and thank you for what you're doing. You mentioned the pressures that currently exist, and I was wondering if you might be a little bit more specific with respect to the categorization, if you will, of those types of pressures that currently face the open space, and perhaps, to the extent that you can, which of those seem to be the most urgent as it relates to the open space today?
So there's a couple kinds of pressure. Do you want to answer that, or shall I take a shot at it? Okay, she'll add on. A lot of these open spaces, we notice like Schweich Hill is dedicated to open space drainage and utilities. There's a water line through Schweich Hill. And if that water line breaks, we know the Public Works is going to go in there with a backhoe and fix that water line. A lot of the open spaces have sewer in there, same thing. Public Works is going to have a priority. So that's one kind of pressure that we have. We would like to work with Public Works on a protocol for going in and minimizing their damage. And we've suggested that in our open space working group. The other one is, I would point to kids that just like to have fun. You've got kids whose parents' house backs up to an open space and there's nothing like a cool trail. They can ride their bicycle. I have seen a couple instances now in Golden. Electric bikes with fat, knobby tires are really popular with like 11-year-old boys. Those things go 30 miles an hour, and they're really powerful. I saw a social trail develop in about 2 days. It went from, you could see that there was a bicycle track in there, to the vegetation has been totally ripped up. So that's one that occurs to me. I don't think we have pressure for other city needs, like, say, for affordable housing. I don't think that's really a risk right now, because most of these parcels are really not buildable. Got any other ideas for pressures?
Well, I think we can't take the potential development off the table completely. But I think it's, as Tom said, it's active recreation that would require, facilities and more trails than exist now. And I think that's the tension that we're hoping that this open space master plan can balance. And that's why I think the distinction between open space, natural area open space, and parks and recreation facilities is really important to keep in mind when we talk about what opportunities there are for residents to enjoy these areas. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you very
I have a question regarding the open space in North Table Mountain. In the late 70s and 80s, I chaired a citizens committee to fight to save that mountain. And we did win it. And so, because they were not able to develop it, and they, meaning Western Paving Company, at some point in time after that, there was a land swap between Western Paving and County Open Space. And so the top of the mountain now is all county open space. And at that time, I thought all the sides were also county. How did Golden get that land for Golden versus the county? Because the county took the top. So that's my question.
So, on that slope of North Table Mountain, you see the kind of that arcuate shape or lunate shape on the screen. No, I've on the wrong slide. You can't see it. How about if I make it so you can see it? Let's do that sort of arcuate shape, which the city owns the slope of the mountain. There's about actually 6 parcels there. And most of those that are up sort of the north end, the upper part, the city acquired as part of the Mesa Meadows development. So that was deeded to the city in the development of Mesa Meadows. Those parcels that are more down towards the bottom, the south end, were actually sold to the city of Golden by Jefferson County. So Jefferson County acquired them first. It was a sale. And it was sold to Golden with a reverter clause that says it must be used for recreational purposes only. So if we decide we want to go in there and, put in a casino, then the land would revert back to Jefferson County. Lots of details that I skipped over, of course.
Over here. Yeah, here it is. Over here, Tom, the other Tom.
Hey.
Hi. So from a point of view of a user, I walk up Lubon. We talked about maybe getting the Lubon plaque and the Lubon bench back up there somehow. But then we get up on the top of the mesa, and it's Jefferson County, and it's seamless. There's no difference to me what I'm walking on. So can you clarify why it's important for us to know what land we're on, and how does it differ? How does access differ? How do the rules of use differ? What should I keep in my mind as importance between Golden open space and Jefferson open space?
Several years ago, the city did a lot of work dealing with the issues of parking on Belvedere, which is the trailhead for the Lubon Trail, to try to accommodate the neighbors there. I remember hearing a story about neighbors finding people picnicking on their front lawn, for example. And so one of the things that the city did was they brought the city regulations for that area into agreement with the county regulations. So in theory, it's closed an hour after sunset and not open again until an hour before sunset. I don't go over there much, so I don't really know what's actually happening there. One of the things we did talk about in our open space working group was we should have some little signs that say, now entering City of Golden open space, just to remind people that we do have open space in this city, and by the way, you're in it. Is that responsive to your question?
I just wondered, is there any difference in the rules of use or to save nature or to prevent erosion or anything like that that differs from the two entities?
I don't think there is, and I think Golden tried to match what Jefferson County does on the rest of South Table Mountain. In some extent, it's a question of resources, because when the Lubon Trail got in really bad condition, the city of Golden contracted with Jefferson County to bring their trails team out and rehabilitate the Golden portion of the Lubon Trail. I think that's a good plan. And I think that's a good plan for the Lubon Trail because it's right adjacent to Jefferson County open space. And I think when we're thinking about the North Table Mountain city open space, we should consider that it is contiguous with Jefferson County, and we should probably manage that exactly the same as well. But
I just want to add that my understanding is that for other open spaces that may not have had deliberate consideration of what the rules should be, like South Table, there are no rules right now. And that's the purpose of the open space master plan, is to address issues like you raised, like erosion, like access, like building structures, and I've seen it in Kinney Run. There's a lot more, I don't know what you call them, stick structures that are going up. So that's why we think it's important to have some guidance on how these areas should be managed. Probably some will be managed similar to Jeffco Open Space because they're directly contiguous and form an entryway. Good question.
So, first of all, thanks for what the stewards do. You've done amazing things. I think that's really, really wonderful. So that should be applauded here. So, yeah. And second of all, so what kind of criteria should we use for identifying what's open space? I mean, we've seen the map you have and the map that the city has. So why isn't the Bachman property on there? Why is not the Triceratops Trail on there? Why things like there's an open space area right next to New Loveland Mine Park and White Ash Mine Park. Those seem like things that might be right to be on this map here.
So there's three different things I think going on there. For New Loveland Mine Park, they call that the natural area. So it's part of the park. It's called the natural area. The same thing happens at the lawn. It's pretty small. And by natural area, what I think that the Park and Rec Department means is that's a place they don't mow. I think that's the primary criteria for calling it a natural area. Kermit and I know each other, and Kermit knows that I go in there and I actually weed in the natural area at New Loveland Mine Park, trying to get rid of the Dalmatian toadflax. For the Bachman property, which I guess we're now calling the South Neighborhoods Park, I have heard varying things. Sometimes I listen to the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, sometimes I forget. But it has a sign on it that says it's open space, and I think we were doing some planning to figure out how we're going to develop it, and maybe some of it being like prepared park, some of it being open space. And then we had an issue with stormwater, and Public Works says, no, we got to solve this problem first. And I think we're waiting to find out what happens there. Then we could come back and perhaps the Parks and Recreation Advisory Board could say, this really ought to be open space. We've just left it off because its status just keeps changing back and forth. And actually, up until, last April, the farmhouse wasn't even in the city. There was a little carve out that wasn't even in the city. Was there a third one I was supposed to say something about? Triceratops Trail. Yeah, I don't know why that one got dropped off. I have seen kind of a tendency to insist on having real estate parcel boundaries to say this is open space, this is not, and it's a real struggle to get some of the folks we're working with to say, well, wait a minute, yeah, this is a big parcel here, it's the golf course parcel, but this chunk here really ought to be called open space and not golf course. And I don't think we've really pushed on that issue very hard. Might be worth pushing on, though.
Hey, Tom, what's that white thing in the middle of green there on North Table Mountain? What's the story there?
So, according to the Jefferson County Assessor, this is Mesa Meadows private open space. That's, if you live in Mesa Meadows, that's your private open space. Any more?
Questions?
Very illuminating. Thank you very much. Tell me about the North Golden Hogback open space, because that's, it looks like it's on the west side of the Hogback.
Yeah, it's the portion of the hogback that's inside city limits. So it's kind of chopped off on the north end, and that's right where the city limits goes through. North of that is owned by the state of Colorado, and part of that by Jefferson County, and part of it's private. It was mine, and we actually have an author in the room of an excellent book called Golden Rocks. It talks about the story of that particular hogback and some of the others. Not jumping up and down. So what I tell you is pretty much from her book, from Donna Anderson's book. But it was mined out, and I think all the clay that was usable was mined. They silly, as you know, they want to mine farther north, and there's some people who want to prevent that from happening. It's not very safe in there because there are some vertical cliffs in really fractured sandstone. I don't recommend going in there. It's fenced, but the gate of the fence has been jimmied, so you can just open the gate and walk in if you want to. I probably should not be telling these stories. But in there, after they took the clay out, in the sides of those pits, someone saw some footprints, and that's where the fossil bird prints are. Now, I've been up and down that probably about 10 times. I've collected probably about 80 species of plants on that hill. It's kind of typical for what you find around Golden, although I did find one little thing. It's called a blue toadflax, a little annual toadflax. Gets about this high, has a blue flower. And the last time it was seen in Golden, I think, was 1906, and it was seen along 8th Street when the railroad went on 8th Street up near where the Briarwood was. So there's a uncommon plant. It's not really rare in Colorado, but you occasionally find really interesting stuff when you're just out walking around.
So I think this is a very interesting example of an open space that has some significant resources, but also some significant challenges. It is closed. It is dangerous. It should be closed right now for good reason, because there really is no safe access to this most of the hogback, wouldn't you say? But there's a drum set on the top, and there's a dead drone somewhere up there too. But I think it is a very valuable resource that we have. But one of the complications, as I understand it, and Donna can probably elaborate more, is there may be conflicting jurisdictions about this site because of the existence of the fossils, which are historic sites, and also because of the designation of the National Natural Landmark. But there's opportunities also for there's some educational value for this site if the access can be controlled and the safety issues and the preservation of the important resources can be managed. I would, if you're interested, I don't know, do they get copies of well, on our website, we have citations to the academic papers that have been prepared about the fossils, the crocodile fossils and the bird tracks. I would encourage you to read it if you're interested in them.
I go for one more. All right, so you guys, early on, you referenced some coordination with Jefferson County Open Space. And I'm just curious about any, in the master plan, and I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with what version your draft master plan might be in, or final version, et cetera. But where are you guys with trail connectivity? Because that's something that's pretty important for Jefferson County Open Space, and just wondering if you've even considered trail connectivity.
It sort of depends upon what kind of trail and where. There are, in the more heavily used open spaces, there are good trails now. Kenny Run, Tucker Gulch has a good trail. There's a trail over Schweich Hill, although it's a social trail. The city has a trail on North Table Mountain, and South Table Mountain. Then there's some other little ones like Cottonwood, which is like 1.5 acres. Do we need a trail in there or not? There's actually a social trail along the Welch Ditch that the kids use going to high school, to access the high school. I just want the city to be really careful about where they put trails, and that would be after we do an inventory, especially a biological inventory, to see where those biological resources are and make sure that we don't accidentally put a trail and wipe out something we'd rather not wipe out. Is that okay? Okay.
I want to just follow up the Franks because it made me think of, is there representation from the business community in this? Because when you start talking about trail access, and we've got all of these bike rentals coming in now, and all this other tourists coming in, and they may use this stuff and want to come see it, and you know, is there representation from that? Is there an aspect of the business side that's being addressed in the master plan?
The Colorado Mountain Biking Association is listed as a stakeholder in this plan. I'm not sure of any of the businesses.
There isn't any formal representation by the business community on either the working group or the stakeholder group, but we did not have the privilege of designing the composition of those groups. And I think you raised an important point, and gets back to the question about the pressures that are on these areas. And it also, I think, relates to what Tom said, is that many of these areas, they're not closed. The Dakota Hogback access is closed to the fossils, but these areas, many of them, as Tom mentioned, have existing trails. And I think the purpose of our organization and the Open Space Master Plan is to identify what is adjacent to those trails. There is a rule in Golden right now, I think Don, correct me if I'm wrong, saying that human access is supposed to be limited to trails. You're supposed to stay on the trails when you're on a bike or walking. And I think it's important, what we think is important is to understand what surrounds those trails and what kind of access makes sense in order to preserve what should be preserved in those surrounding areas.
We're gonna do our concluding gratitudes, and there's always beer. It's Golden Beer Talks. We again are grateful to the Haskins Day and Cameron households for supporting us. We are grateful to the Buffalo Rose and to Brandon and to Dave for always showing up for us, and we are grateful to both of you. So here you go. You can put some beer in that. There you go. And we are so grateful to you for being our audience and for continuing to support us with your participation. Hope you'll be back next month. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Have a great night.